There are moments in life when the world tries to tell you who you're supposed to be. When you're young, when you're successful too soon, when millions of eyes are watching your every move, it's easy to lose yourself in the noise. But for Miley Cyrus, the story was never about fitting in. It was about breaking free. From the moment she stepped into the spotlight, the world fell in love with a bright-eyed girl named Hannah Montana. On screen, she was the perfect image of Disney innocence, the teenager who could balance fame and friendship, wigs and dreams. But behind that image was a girl struggling to find her identity in a world that demanded perfection. Born Destiny Hope Cyrus in Tennessee, music was in her DNA. Her father, country star Billy Ray Cyrus, knew the cost of fame, the spotlight, the criticism, the expectations. But even he couldn't have imagined how early the pressure would begin for his daughter. At 13, Miley became a global phenomenon. Her smile was everywhere, on lunchboxes, posters, concert tickets. But while the world saw Hannah Montana, Miley saw a character that was slowly swallowing her real self. She once said in an interview, "People think they know me, but they only know who they want me to be." Imagine being a teenager, still discovering who you are while millions tell you who you should be. That pressure built quietly, and for years she carried it with grace. But deep down, she was waiting for the moment she could step out from behind the blonde wig and say, "This is me." As the show ended, Miley faced a choice: stay the sweet Disney girl forever, or take control of her own narrative. She chose the harder path. She chose authenticity. But the moment she did, the backlash came like a storm. The media called her reckless. Fans called her lost. Headlines mocked her. But what they missed was the truth. She wasn't falling apart. She was breaking free. The transformation shocked the world. Gone were the bubblegum pop songs and sparkly costumes. In their place stood a young woman exploring her voice, her style, her identity. She experimented with sound, with performance, with self-expression. Her 2013 VMA performance became one of the most talked about moments in pop culture, not because of controversy, but because it marked the death of an image and the birth of an artist. In later years, Miley explained, "It takes a long time to reach the top. You have to be persistent." AddictedSuccess.com. Those words sum up her spirit. Every time the world tried to define, she redefined herself. Every time they judged, she evolved. But behind the glitter and rebellion was pain. Miley was growing up under the world's microscope. Every mistake became a headline. Every heartbreak became gossip. When her engagement to actor Liam Hemsworth first ended, tabloids called it a scandal. When it reignited, they called it a fairy tale. And when it finally ended again after years together, they called it a failure. Yet Miley never responded with bitterness. She turned her heartbreak into melody. Her music became her therapy. Wrecking Ball, Slide Away, Flowers. Each song carried pieces of her truth, raw and unfiltered. In interviews, she said she sees change as survival. "I'm constantly evolving," she explained. "People get stuck when they think change means inconsistency. But for me, it means growth." That's the heart of Miley Cyrus. She isn't afraid of transformation. She embraces it. Through her 20s, she faced more criticism than most people face in a lifetime. Yet, she never let it silence her. She battled anxiety, public judgment, and personal loss, including the devastating Malibu wildfires that destroyed her home in 2018. Still, she stood tall, rebuilding her life piece by piece. The world saw her as fearless, but what made her truly strong was her ability to feel deeply and still move forward. Her evolution as an artist mirrors her evolution as a person. After years of experimentation, her 2023 hit Flowers became a global anthem for independence and self-love. The lyrics, "I can buy myself flowers, write my name in the sand," weren't just catchy lines, they were a declaration of healing. She had found peace not in someone else's validation, but in her own reflection. In one of her recent interviews, she said something profound. "I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore. My art speaks for itself." That's the voice of someone who's walked through fire and learned to dance in the ashes. Miley's journey teaches us that growth often means shedding versions of ourselves that no longer serve us. It means losing people, facing criticism, and standing alone sometimes. But it also means freedom, the kind of freedom that comes from living your truth without apology. Miley Cyrus's story is not just about fame. It's about evolution, endurance, and emotional honesty. Over the years, she's transformed from a teenage pop star into a woman who defines success on her own terms. But that transformation didn't happen overnight. It came from countless moments of doubt, reflection, and courage. When she looks back at her early fame, Miley often says she felt like she was living a double life, one for the cameras and one for herself. The irony isn't lost on her. Hannah Montana was literally about a girl leading two lives. But for Miley, that was reality. It took her years to merge those two versions into one authentic self. The world often misreads reinvention as rebellion, but in Miley's case, reinvention was redemption. Every time she changed her look or her sound, she wasn't chasing shock value. She was chasing truth. She was shedding layers, becoming lighter, freer. She once said, "When you strip everything away, the fame, the noise, the judgment, what's left is your voice. That's all that matters." Her voice, both literally and figuratively, has always been her weapon. From the raw vulnerability of The Climb to the self-assurance of Midnight Sky, her songs are chapters of her story. They trace a path from innocence to awareness, from confusion to clarity. And each time, she uses her music to connect with people who feel lost, misunderstood, or stuck between who they are and who the world expects them to be. Outside of music, Miley has become a symbol of resilience and compassion. She's an outspoken advocate for animal rights, LGBT+ equality, and mental health awareness. Through her Happy Hippie Foundation, she's helped homeless youth, supported transgender communities, and encouraged young people to embrace kindness as a form of strength. She once explained, "I learned that making noise for good is louder than any scandal." That's her legacy, not the controversies, but the courage to care loudly. What's most powerful about her story is how she turns criticism into creativity. When people doubted her talent, she released deeper, more soulful music. When they mocked her choices, she used her platform to spread self-acceptance. When they said she'd fade away, she came back stronger, not with anger, but with art. In 2020, she released Plastic Hearts, an album that showcased her rock roots and emotional maturity. Critics called it her best work yet. And when Flowers topped charts around the world, she didn't celebrate with arrogance. She celebrated with gratitude. She thanked her fans, her pain, and her past, the very things that once held her back. Miley's transformation is proof that you can be both soft and strong, vulnerable and powerful. She doesn't hide her scars. She wears them like medals. Every time she falls, she finds a melody in the rubble. And that's what makes her story universal, because we've all been there. We've all felt misunderstood, misjudged, or trapped by expectations. But few have the courage to rebuild themselves in front of the entire world. She did. One of her most inspiring qualities is how she owns her imperfections. She doesn't pretend to be flawless or untouchable. Instead, she's honest about her growth, her mistakes, and her lessons. That authenticity has earned her something far more valuable than fame: respect. Miley Cyrus teaches that reinvention isn't betrayal, it's self-preservation. When you outgrow an identity, you have two choices: stay comfortable or evolve. She chose evolution, even when it meant losing people and facing criticism. And in doing so, she became a beacon for anyone who's ever felt trapped by expectations. Her story reminds us that healing doesn't happen in silence. It happens when you embrace your chaos and turn it into creation. It happens when you stop apologizing for who you are and start living for what you believe. That's why her journey continues to inspire millions. She's not just an artist. She's a survivor, a builder, and a believer in her own transformation. In a 2023 interview, Miley said, "The hardest part about growing up in front of the world is letting yourself change when everyone wants you to stay the same. But that's where freedom lives, in change." Those words echo far beyond music. They're a message to anyone afraid to evolve. Growth is uncomfortable. It requires courage, but it's the only way to become who you're meant to be. When you listen to her sing, you hear more than a melody. You hear resilience. You hear a woman who's fallen apart and rebuilt herself with the very pieces that once broke her. You hear someone who has stopped chasing perfection and started chasing peace. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. Peace isn't found in applause. It's found in authenticity. Miley's evolution continues. Each year, she steps more fully into her power, not because she's trying to prove herself, but because she's finally free. She no longer lives for approval. She lives for expression. She no longer performs to please. She performs to connect. That's why her music feels alive, because it's real. Her life reminds us that you can't control how the world sees you, but you can control how you see yourself. You can't stop people from judging, but you can stop letting it define you. You can't predict the storms, but you can learn to dance in the rain. When you face rejection, remember Miley Cyrus. When you're misunderstood, remember how she stood tall. When people try to box you in, remember how she broke free. Because like her, you have the power to rewrite your story, to turn pain into art, criticism into confidence, and endings into new beginnings. So, as the world continues to evolve, so will she. Not as Hannah Montana, not as the rebel of the VMAs, but as Miley Cyrus, a woman who found her truth and chose to live it loudly. And maybe that's the message we all need. That no matter who you were yesterday, you can always choose who you'll be tomorrow.